Hi everyone, welcome to or back to my channel. My name is James Feeney. I wanted to just come on today and make a video where I sort of felt compelled to. I'm packing up and sort of in the midst of all these boxes, so sorry if you see some clutter in the background, but taking a break from that, and I felt inspired to sort of speak on a various topic, or on a topic um, that came to mind. So I know that a lot of people ask questions, or at least going around YouTube, I see a lot of questions about magic, spells, opinions, various things circulating, and everybody's thoughts on various types of magic or spells. So I thought I would offer my 2 cents in an area that I have had some experience or experiences in. Uh, Kind of like my gateway actually into sort of spellcraft. So banishing spells, they are interesting. So I guess I'm going to kind of start with my experience, sort of how I came at it and how that evolved, and my opinions on it currently. So this is gonna be a little bit of a story time. So coming into uh, witchcraft and spellcraft, or at least a lot of people come into witchcraft, I should say, through spellcraft, and I guess I could make a whole video on that topic, but for the sake of time, we are going to stick to something a little bit more specific. So, banishing spells. This was a banishing spell was actually the first spell I uh, performed or tried to perform as in within kind of like my journey, or as far as witchcraft kind of goes. It's sort of my gateway there, and it was more so curiosity and sort of being in a situation that I wasn't really fond of that drove me, or at least inspired me, to attempt this. And yes, it was successful, and I think it was a major lesson. So, as the story goes, I had a roommate in college, and he was nice. We didn't exactly get along, actually. So yeah, things were a little bit separate. He liked to have a lot of people over, his girlfriend over a lot. He was not very clean, not very respectful. Of course, I try to withhold judgment. He was never outright malicious to me. I did know that he was cheating on his girlfriend. There were he did like do some drugs, so that was interesting. That wasn't my ideal situation. So, of course, just trying to figure out things in a really reasonable manner, I went to the school. You can file requests to be moved, and in doing that, there's a wait time. It sort of goes on a case by case basis, and I didn't want to file one of the urgent or like safety related ones just because they launch an investigation, and I didn't want to get him in trouble by filling out something that was pretty urgent sounding. I just really wasn't. We didn't really get along too well. We weren't very similar, and uh, I didn't really like the way that he conducted himself personally. So yeah, so I waited for a few weeks, no responses, and just like a bunch of late nights, not being able to sleep because of his activities. And so, of course, I got sort of sick of this, and I was like, okay, so what are sort of other options? And at the time, I hadn't really taken the plunge into witchcraft or any sort of spiritual type means of handling situations, or at least not consciously so. So this was very new to me, but I came across it online, and I was like, okay, so let's do our research. And I knew very little to none. So I found a banishing spell, and to me, this sounded like the perfect solution. I know a lot better now. Um, but yeah, I was like, oh, this sounds nice. It didn't seem like anything I definitely didn't want it to be malicious. I didn't want it to be something that would um, incite anything harmful or negative. But it seemed like something like that would separate us, that would kind of make our lives diverge. And at least that's how it was described, and that's kind of the way that I wanted it to come into being. So I sort of adapted it myself, as I think a lot of spells are. Well, for myself, I like to adapt them a little bit. I'm not somebody who's super strict with the guidelines when I see one, or like in a book online, or just sometimes now I'll just craft them on my own. Uh, but yeah, I'm definitely one to sort of personalize. So I took what was there, my entryway to like how the moon phases may affect or correspond to different types of spell. Like this was everything was new here. So, um, long story short, I conducted the spell, did the spell. It was many nights. Waning moon. I kind of really tried to go all out with the correspondences, and I really did dedicate myself to this process every single night. To a T of what one the instructions or sort of written spell asked for, along with the things that I then decided were going to be included. So it took a bunch of nights. I believe it was 9 nights, and so I was pretty confident in that this was going to work for me. So it happened. The spell was, and so then it was time to wait. And this is when I started to realize that maybe things wouldn't turn out exactly as planned. I think maybe I definitely could have benefited from being more experienced or specific in my intentions and how I would then proclaim or specify I want the outcome to be. Uh, I'm not 100% sure if everything can be attributed to the spell, but what I will say is I did do the spell. That is a fact. And in the coming days, within like the over the course of the next 2 weeks, and I should have known this. I mean, how? Yes, I wanted our lives to diverge. I did not want to be in this living situation. In my head, I thought, oh, my request or process for the room change will just come into being, and it'll kind of like nudge that along. But I didn't specify what I wanted out of this. I didn't specify the way that I wanted this to come into being. So he ended up getting mono, and his girlfriend broke up with him. Although I mean, I feel so bad. I'm like, oh my god, I'm like not a horrible person, but I mean, he was cheating on her, and she found out during that time, which is why she broke up with him. So that, of all the things, I think that was probably the most justified uh, karmic type scenario to come out of it. Also, so he got mono pretty badly. His girlfriend broke up with him after she found out that he was cheating. His bank information was stolen, um, which wound up being quite a scenario. And then his grades, they really suffered from being sick, and he wasn't sure if he was going to pass and be able to stay at school. And he ended up being home quite a bit. He didn't live that far away, just because he had mono when he was sick, so he would go home. And he was also kind of sad because his girlfriend broke up with him. Yeah, so that happened, and then he was talking about moving in with his friends to sort of like boost his spirits. And so it turns out, I think, I can't say for sure because I didn't communicate with him too much one-on-one, but I believe he wound up living with his friends, and in the same time, actually, my friend asked me if I wanted to live with her the following semester. By this point, we were pretty much at the end of the fall semester, so I accepted that. And yeah, he may have stayed in the same location and just had friends come. I don't know, or if he moved to them. But I wound up being able to leave just because I had somebody else to then, and like, you could get a new room if you had a second person, or if somebody already had the room and somebody was leaving, and they could choose who they wanted to fill that spot. So that happened. Um, and of course, I can't know what about this was related to the spell, if anything. But it was a really odd set of coincidences that followed a spell that was meant to separate me and this person, and our circumstances and lives. I will say, if it was at all connected to the spell, which it, I would say that maybe, yeah, or that at least the spell didn't help. But I also got mono, so that was also fun. Yeah, he got it first, and then I got it because I was. I mean, these are dorms; they're very close, so I got maybe not as ill as him, but I was pretty rough shape for a few weeks, so that was not good. And what I gained from this, as somebody who came into this super naive, hoping for just this idealistic outcome, was that performing magic or spells or conducting spellcraft that is meant to influence another, um, especially in a way that um, could that is either neutral or tending towards potential negative outcomes, is uh, although I did not intend any malice or harm for him, was just not something I wanted to do. And that was the first spell I did, and the first time I ever cast a spell or uh, did any sort of magic toward another, and it was also the last. It's been many years, and I, at that very single circumstance, feel as though, I mean, I felt so guilty. I feel guilty. He ended up being fine. I know for a fact that he did stay at school, um, and that he graduated. So, but I felt so guilty, you know? And of course, this, like, might not have even been me. There's no guarantees. I tend to think, though, that as somebody who does this kind of thing, um, yeah, is a witch yeah, who cast spells and uh, those sorts of things, I do tend to think that my influence did not help, and ultimately was the result or outcome that I wanted of separation achieved? Yes, but through means that um, were not so great, and so for that reason, I decided to not do things like that anymore, to sort of stop myself, and especially, I mean, yeah, so spellcraft that affects others is just really not in alignment with my moral codes and compass, and that is something I think it took that circumstance for me to learn that about myself and uh, kind of gain a greater knowledge. It was definitely a stepping stone, a learning point that awakened me to the fact that this wasn't something I wanted to do, but it also let me know that, I mean, it did sort of incite or spark my desire to learn more. Of course, after this, yes, it worked. That made me curious, but I was like, I don't want to go down this path where I am doing or attempting to do things that influence others. Uh, so yeah, but as far as banishing spells go, that's my experience as far as people go. Since then, I have performed other banishing spells, but they've all been very different. Never meant to banish a person or to affect someone's life. I've banished negativity. I have banished negative energy, forces, things that might be that I feel might be affecting me. Maybe a mindset or a state of being that I've been within that I just needed to shake. Banishing things like that, or banishing sort of broad circumstances of the lack mindset or stagnation, banishing stagnation. I think that banishing spells of that sort are a lot more. I think that a lot more people will sort of jive with that morality, and just in that the only one being affected is yourself, and it's not intended to touch upon anybody else aside from you, your mind, your body, your circumstances, and it is very much of, or at least for me, it's very much from a place of pure intent, meaning to better myself and also better myself so that I can be a better human being for others and to others. Um, I'm being, yeah, completely honest with you guys in the fact that I did have that time where that thing happened, and I'm not perfect by any means. You know, we all make mistakes and we learn, and I think that it's important to get to a place where we are comfortable and we do know what we feel is right. And the point of me making this is, one, to sort of um, let you guys get to know me a little bit better, especially in the realm of magic and witchcraft and things that I also plan to be talking about, but also so that maybe you guys can avoid some of the mistakes that I have made, or so that you can kind of see firsthand how certain things uh, happen for others in regards to different types of magic, or if you're looking for other firsthand experiences and opinions going into this, maybe you're looking up a banishing spell now, uh, and you come across this. I definitely encourage you to, one, do your research, and I think that actually, um, talking in an even larger sense, if you, and this, of course, these are all my opinions, my input on the matters of um, spellcraft banishing, but I'd encourage you to, one, study, learn, um, maybe not even try a banishing spell as your first spell. Maybe I think things like meditative processes and I mean something that is, I guess, banishing if you are talking in terms of energy and mindset. That would be what would be quote unquote more so in the realm potentially of higher magic, whereas a physical circumstance, say banishing a person, would be lower magic. Depending on who you're talking to, but those are definitely categories that I can sort of associate with. But yeah, trying things like that are a little bit more, I wouldn't say simple, because I don't think a banishing spell needs to be complex. It's only as complex as you make it. But start with something that is more aimed to create, to something for yourself, so that the worst thing that happens, I mean, say instead of banishing negativity, you want to create positivity. Um, Try that first, because the worst thing that's going to happen is likely, hopefully, if you come into it just with that intention, that it just won't work. And I mean, it's all about your mindset. So if you are fully believing and you know that it will work, creating positivity, and you are so confident in your spellcraft, and you are focused and driven, and you just feel like you have the knowledge, the skills, and the confidence in yourself to make it work, it most likely will. It will. Um, Maybe not in the exact ways you imagine, which is part of the key here. I mean, you can ask the universe for a cookie, and you might. I mean, this is extremely metaphorical, metaphorically intended. But yeah, you could ask for a cookie. It doesn't mean it's going to get handed to you on a silver platter. You might get smacked in the head with it. You know, so just about knowing that uh, you can ask for certain things, but don't expect everything to go exactly as you plan it to be. You ask for, you do a spell for a career, to be hired. First of all, you've got to be doing things like applying for jobs, and you can't just sit back and rest on your laurels and expect the universe to just deposit something in your lap that just couldn't possibly be. So, for example, if you'd like to banish negativity and you are moping at home and not doing anything to actually usher out that negativity from your life, chances are it's going to stay, because you need to make some moves, some action, like have some action of your own that is helping the situation. If you aren't helping and working towards just as much as you would like for something to happen, um, yeah, the universe, energy, however you believe these things come into being, cannot fully happen, or at least for the most part, will not fully happen if you don't have the intention and you don't take action based on that intention and that desire. Um, so yeah, that's more than half the battle, actually. Um, and if you think there's no such thing as a wrong way to do any given spell, especially banishing. Um, Maybe you are really into learning correspondences and crafting your own, and you know that black is great for banishing. You know that the waning moon is when you want to do it because things are. It's a time of change. It's a time of letting go, release, and you decide to then learn a lot about like herbology and various spice. Like you learn the correspondences of different crystals, and you're like, oh, I'm going to use smoky quartz and things like that. That's awesome. Craft your own if that's how you feel drawn to spellcraft. If you're somebody who really benefits from structure and order, and you want to find one and you want to follow a ritual very strictly, I would say there's no wrong way. If you feel drawn and you feel more confident performing a spell in that way, then that's what will work for you. If that doesn't work for you and it doesn't feel like it's resonating in the slightest, then it probably won't work. You won't be focused. You'll be focused on the fact that it doesn't feel quite right, or that you're too focused, I guess, on the details of the specific spell or doing it as opposed to the outcome. So making sure that your heart and your mind are in it in the best way, and that the way that you are conducting it is in alignment with who you are, is key. So if you were coming here looking for a step-by-step tutorial on how to do a banishing spell, I can provide that. So comment down below if that's something you'd like to see. I've done a few, and no two are the same, but I can try to give you guys, for me, what would be a very general banishing spell, and sort of diverge on certain paths where I think others might like one thing or another. But that is my history and experience with banishing spells, and a little bit on my opinions as far as they go, morality wise, and more spellcraft in general, and what it means to me and how I think of it. So if you found any of this even remotely interesting, I really encourage you guys to start a dialogue in the comments, or to tell me what you guys would like to see next. So until then, have a good night or day, or wherever you guys are, whatever time it is. Bye.